The air in the university auditorium was thick with the scent of floor wax and expensive perfume. To anyone else, it was the smell of achievement. To me, it felt like a countdown. I sat in the third row, my graduation gown heavy on my shoulders, listening to the dean's voice drone on about bright futures. I glanced over my shoulder. My family was there, but they weren't looking at me. My brother, Marcus, was leaning back in his seat, smirking as he whispered something to my mother. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound that cut through the dignified silence. Even on my day the day I was graduating summa cum laude after working 2 jobs to pay the tuition they refused to cover, I was just the background character in the Marcus show. I wonder, as you're listening to this, maybe while doing chores or driving home, have you ever felt completely invisible to the people who are supposed to love you most? Like you're standing in a spotlight, yet they're looking right through you at someone else. My name is Elena. I'm 24 years old, and today was supposed to be the culmination of 4 years of grinding. I work as a junior analyst for a private forensics firm, a job I kept secret because I knew my family would only find a way to belittle it. My father always said I didn't have the business instinct. Marcus had. Marcus, the golden boy. Marcus, the successful real estate developer who still lived off a trust fund he was rapidly draining. As the ceremony progressed, Marcus caught my eye. He didn't offer a thumbs up or a smile. Instead, he mouthed the words, "Don't get too comfortable." He had been dropping hints for weeks that he had a big surprise for my graduation dinner, something that would finally put things in perspective. I knew my brother. A surprise from Marcus wasn't a gift, it was a landmine. He couldn't stand the idea of me having a moment that didn't revolve around his superiority. But what Marcus didn't realize was that my job at the forensics firm gave me access to tools and databases he couldn't even imagine. While he was busy planning how to humiliate me, I had spent the last month peeling back the layers of his perfect life. The dean began calling the names for the College of Business. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from nerves about the stage, but from the weight of the manila envelope tucked firmly under my seat. Marcus thought he was going to ruin my night. He had no idea I was about to dismantle his entire world. As my name echoed through the speakers and I stood up to walk toward the stage, Marcus's smirk widened. He didn't clap. He just leaned over to my mother and whispered loud enough for the rows around them to hear. I hope she enjoyed the hobby while it lasted. Tomorrow, she starts as my junior assistant. It's time she actually learned how to work. My mother nodded, her eyes fixed on Marcus, not me. It's for the best, Marcus. You'll be able to keep an eye on her. I felt the blood rush to my face, but I kept my pace steady. Their plan was simple. Marcus had convinced my parents that my degree in forensic accounting was a waste of time, and that I was struggling to find work. They had already drafted a contract for me to work under him, essentially, as his glorified secretary with a salary that wouldn't even cover my rent. It was their way of keeping me under their thumb, ensuring I remained the little sister who needed saving. After the ceremony, we moved to the university's grand reception hall. Huge crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, reflecting off the polished marble. My parents had insisted on hosting a celebratory lunch here, but it wasn't for me. The guest list was packed with Marcus's business associates and my father's golf friends. "Elena, darling," my mother said, barely glancing at my diploma as I approached the table. "Marcus has something he wants to announce. Sit down and try not to look so sullen. It's a big day for the family." Marcus stood up, tapping a silver spoon against his champagne flute. The room fell silent. "Thank you, everyone," he began, his voice dripping with practiced charisma. "We're also proud of my sister for finally finishing school. But more importantly, I'm thrilled to announce that Elena will be joining my firm, Marcus Sterling Developments, as my personal assistant starting Monday. It's time we brought the family back together." A smattering of polite applause broke out. My father beamed, patting Marcus on the back. Marcus looked at me, a predatory glint in his eyes. He thought he had trapped me. He thought that by announcing it publicly, I'd be too embarrassed to decline and look ungrateful in front of their peers. What he didn't know was that while I was studying for my finals, I had been running a deep background audit on Marcus Sterling Developments. I hadn't just found the clerical errors he was hiding from our father. I had found the paper trail of a life he'd been living 300 miles away in a different city. I felt the manila envelope resting against my leg. It contained more than just spreadsheets. It contained a birth certificate, a lease agreement for a luxury penthouse in the city of Riverside, and photos of a woman named Sarah and a 3-year-old boy who looked exactly like a younger version of my brother. Marcus had a secret family. A wife and a child he'd been supporting with business expenses embezzled from my father's company for the last 4 years. He was a master of the double life, but he had become sloppy. He thought I was too invisible to notice the discrepancies in the family accounts. Well, Elena? Marcus prompted, his smile never wavering. Aren't you going to thank me for the opportunity? I took a slow, deliberate sip of water. The calm drama I had been rehearsing in my head for weeks was about to begin. Actually, Marcus, I said, my voice steady and clear enough to carry to the neighboring tables. I think there's a much more important announcement we need to make today. Something about your other responsibilities. The room went still. The clinking of silverware against china stopped, replaced by a sudden heavy vacuum of silence. My mother's smile faltered, her perfectly manicured hand pausing halfway to her wine glass. Marcus didn't flinch, not yet. He just chuckled, that condescending, brotherly sound that used to make me feel small. Elena, don't be dramatic, he said, his voice smooth as silk. I know you're overwhelmed by the promotion, but let's not make a scene in front of the board members. It's not a promotion, Marcus, I said, standing up slowly. I reached into the manila envelope and pulled out a stack of high-resolution, glossy photos. And it's certainly not a hobby. You see, Dad always said I didn't have your business instinct. But what I do have is a degree in forensic accounting and a job at a firm that specializes in finding what people try very hard to hide. I walked around the table, placing the first photo directly in front of my father. It was a picture of a charming townhouse in Riverside, 3 hours away. My father squinted at it, confused. What is this, Elena? A real estate lead. That, I said, is where Marcus spends every Tuesday and Thursday when he tells you he's at the regional supply meetings. And this, I slid a second photo across the white linen tablecloth, is Sarah and that little boy holding her hand. His name is Leo. He's 3 years old. He has your eyes, Dad, and Marcus's chin. The color drained from Marcus's face so fast it was like watching a candle blow out. He lunged for the photos, but I was quicker, spreading the rest of the documents across the table for the surrounding guests to see. What is she talking about, Marcus? My mother hissed, her voice trembling. She's lying. Marcus erupted, his cool exterior finally cracking. She's jealous. She's trying to sabotage me because she can't handle working for me. I'm not lying, Marcus, I said, my voice remaining unnervingly calm. I have the birth certificate right here. You're listed as the father. And here, I pulled out a series of bank statements, highlighted in neon yellow, are the wire transfers. Over $400,000 embezzled from the family's development fund over the last 4 years to pay for Sarah's mortgage, her car, and Leo's private preschool. You weren't building a business empire in Riverside. You were building a second life. The business associates at the next table were now leaning in, their eyes wide. My father's face turned a terrifying shade of purple as he looked from the bank statements to his golden boy. The betrayal wasn't just personal, it was financial. Marcus hadn't just lied to them, he had robbed them to fund a secret family he was too ashamed, or too manipulative, to admit existed. Marcus grabbed my arm, his grip bruising. Shut up, Elena. You have no idea what you're doing. I looked down at his hand, then back up at his panicked, sweating face. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. I was the one in control. I know exactly what I'm doing, Marcus, I whispered, loud enough for the whole table to hear. I'm graduating, and you? You're being audited. Marcus's hand dropped from my arm as if he'd been burned. He looked around the room, realizing that the audience he had curated to witness my humiliation was now witnessing his professional and personal execution. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of my father's heavy, labored breathing as he gripped the edge of the table. 400,000? My father wheezed, his voice cracking. He looked at the bank statements, his thumb tracing the highlighted wire transfers. Marcus, tell me she's lying. Tell me this is some sick joke. Marcus opened his mouth, but for the first time in his life, his silver tongue failed him. He stuttered, his eyes darting toward the exit. Dad, it's complicated. Sarah, I was going to tell you, but the timing. The timing? I interrupted, my voice as cool as the marble floors. You mean the timing of when you were going to force me into a dead-end job so I wouldn't have the resources to keep digging? You didn't want a sister, Marcus. You wanted a scapegoat. I turned to my mother, who was staring at the photo of the 3-year-old boy. I saw a flicker of something in her eyes. Perhaps she recognized the family resemblance, but it was quickly replaced by the cold realization of the scandal. This wasn't just a secret family. It was a public disaster. The Sterling name, which she valued above all else, was being dragged through the mud in front of the city's elite. And Mom, I said softly, you were so worried about me looking sullen today. I think you should be more worried about the legal implications of the consulting fees Marcus has been signing off on. As a future forensic accountant, I can tell you the IRS doesn't care about family loyalty. The room erupted. My father stood up, his chair screeching against the floor. Get out, he hissed at Marcus. Get out of this hall. Get out of my sight. And don't you dare show your face at the office on Monday. You're finished. Marcus looked like a cornered animal. He turned his venom on me one last time. You think you've won, Elena? You just destroyed this family. You're nothing without us. No, Marcus, I replied, gathering my diploma and my empty envelope. I'm nothing to you, but to the rest of the world, I'm the person who just saved this family from your fraud. And unlike you, I earned my seat at the table. I watched him stumble out of the reception hall, pursued by the whispers and judgmental stares of the very people he had tried to impress. My parents sat in the wreckage of their perfect reputation, finally seeing the daughter they had ignored for 24 years not as a background character, but as the only one left standing with any integrity. I didn't stay for the dessert course. I had a better reservation. The walk out of the auditorium was the lightest I've ever felt. The evening air was crisp, and for the first time in my life, it didn't feel like I was suffocating under the weight of my brother's shadow. Behind me, the muffled sounds of my parents' raised voices and the frantic whispers of their high society friends faded into a dull hum. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I drove to a small, quiet bistro on the other side of town, a place my family would never visit because it wasn't prestigious enough. I sat by the window, ordered a glass of champagne, and placed my diploma on the table. It wasn't just a piece of paper anymore. It was my ticket to a life where I would never be invisible again. My phone buzzed incessantly. Texts from my mother. How could you do this to your brother? Then, 10 minutes later, we need to talk about the accounts, Elena. Please come home. A voicemail from my father, his voice sounding older and more tired than I'd ever heard it. Elena, I had no idea. We'll handle Marcus. Just come back so we can fix this. I deleted the notifications. They didn't want me, they wanted the forensic accountant who could save their reputation from the mess Marcus had made. But that Elena was gone. The girl who begged for their approval had graduated today, and she was moving on to a firm that actually valued her skills. This is the beauty of silent revenge. It isn't about shouting or matching their cruelty. It's about the quiet power of the truth. It's about building a life so solid and so honest that the lies of toxic people simply shatter against it. I didn't have to ruin Marcus. He had ruined himself. I just chose to stop hiding the evidence. I know many of you watching today might be in a similar position fighting for a seat at a table where you aren't even welcome. If you've ever had to take a stand against family to save your own soul, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a big reveal moment that changed everything? How did you find the strength to walk away? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might be the light someone else needs to find their own way out. If you enjoyed this story of justice and vindication, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own worth, and subscribe to Silent Revenge Lab for more stories of quiet strength and ultimate triumph. I'm Elena, and my new life starts tomorrow. What about yours?